Hello, I'm David, and I'm going to talk to you about a Polish film called Kler, which in English means Clergy. It's a film about the pathology in the Polish Roman Catholic Church, and it's a very interesting phenomena in terms of the relationship of the medium with the system of power currently operating under the dominant ideology of Poland. As upon its release, this film stirred quite a controversy in numerous environments, in numerous communities, because of its subject. It was immediately assumed and described by various media as anti-clerical and anti-Christian film. But the truth is radically different. It's exactly opposite of that. In fact, on the textual and cultural level, film displays itself to be just a commentary on the system of power, on the abuse of power, on the pathology within this system of power, and its final meaning is actually much more Christian than one would assume. We'll get to all that eventually. For now, I will just briefly focus on few things that could interest people who are more familiar with director Wojciech Smarzowski's work. He's a contemporary Polish author, personally my favorite contemporary Polish film director. So, although it may not interest wider audiences, international audiences, I'm going to focus on this anyway. So what is very interesting about this film in terms of the previous director's work, it's its intertextuality. The film references previous director's work directly and indirectly, and it does it in numerous ways. For example, in a couple of opening scenes, one of the protagonists wears a t-shirt with a logo of one of the previous director's films, as well as it's like an auteur method. Smarzowski employs the same actors. Majority of the actors who are in the film already work with the director, but they're put in very similar roles. For example, one of the protagonists, played by Robert Więckiewicz, plays a priest who suffers an addiction to alcohol. He's got a particular habit, and he already played such a character twice, with in the films by this director. Except for that, there are some characters who play basically the same roles in a different film. For example, there is like police officer who also played, the actor who plays him played exactly the same role in the film that was referenced on the t-shirt. That's very funny. Except for that's enough of intertextuality. We'll move in now into the stuff that could potentially interest more people who are generally interested in film and cinema. In terms of the craft, the film being a particular construct, Smarzowski plays with the cinematography. He employs like numerous styles. Although it is a professionally made film, he employs amateur methods of filmmaking as a narrative medium, and back after a cut. So Smarzowski operates with different styles of cinematography. For example, he employs rather forms of cinematography considered amateur. He suddenly puts some footage from mobile phones in the middle of narrative, which is also another reference to his previous work, because he did exactly the same in the film Drogówka, the film from the t-shirt that I mentioned, where basically it feels half of the film is shot on the mobile phones, and it works really well as a narrative device. except for this, Smarzowski plays with different cinematography styles for more expressive purposes. For example, there is a scene where the spectators observes the depiction of an alcoholic party of the archbishop with some like business owners, and it's all arranged to look like a noir film. It's very claustrophobic. Basically, all mise en scène, all the shot is obstructed by the characters. Yeah, like for example, you got like one side of the screen here and another just like here, and there are like those two guys sitting here, and there is Archbishop in the middle. It's all very dark. They're all obviously wearing black because Archbishop is an Archbishop. He's just got his purple cap. The guys are wearing suits. It's all very dark and just like an aura of some light, and it immediately connotes some like gangsters from noir films from 40s, from the American cinema of 1940s, for example. But despite of this clever intertextuality and play with different cinematography styles, some situations in the film seem a bit detached and cliché, just like in Patrick Vega's Pitbull films. And Polish viewers will know exactly what I mean. It seems as if it was a collection of the stories that have been heard of, like rumors or just like pure imagination. But what saves this is that in Patrick Vega's Pitbull films, they just construct whole meta narrative. It's just what it is. You just can't leave the impression that it's just like a compilation of basically rumors from some like fake news websites. And in Clergy, this is like a singular phenomenon. It's just like striking, like, oh, that was a bit simplified, but it serves as a simplified narrative device and not the meta narrative itself, not whole the skeleton, not whole basis for making a film. So maybe let's proceed to more of that controversy thing about this film, and to me it is very, very interesting. I wanted to see the film not only because of the fact that Mr. Smarzowski is my favorite contemporary author, Polish director, but I was also interested to see if my premonition regarding basically the fake propaganda against this film was correct or not. So I'll start from saying something very simple, but which is very easy to be missed while watching the film. So the propaganda, the propaganda vehicle of the Polish government, or of the Polish reality actually, claims that film is not only anti-clerical but primarily anti-Christian. It's not true, and this film, and probably because of the director knowing what will happen, is very self-aware in these terms, and the best proof for that is its textual content. When in one of the scenes we can hear in the background words, it's a question: does this film has any Christian values in it? Which is not only a self-aware emphasis, but also like a cheeky, sarcastic remark towards the upcoming storm. So in this way the film clearly says that it is not anti-Christian by acknowledging the potential outcome, the potential cultural response, and also questioning itself in this way. It basically expresses something opposite, or it can be read as so. Maybe it really doesn't have any Christian values, and I'm just like seeing it all wrong because of my subjective deterministic screen, the lens that I employ to look at it. Anyway, except for this question, which to me is like, you know, the biggest singular evidence for the film not being anti-Christian, is the motto of the film, which is a passage from the Gospel by Matthew, speaking about wolves that come, and we don't see them because they're very clever wolves. So these guys are sheep. But this motto clearly sets the film as a commentary, not an attack. And what it does in its expressive narrative is that it doesn't attack the church per se, not the people, not this congregation of the people who are united by particular system of reference, understood as faith driven by a particular, in this case, Roman Catholic doctrine of Christianity, but it only comments on the pathology within the institution of religion, which is an institutionalization of the faith that unites those people. And obviously, like every system of power, which religion no doubt is, there happen to be the moments when that power is being abused. And by showing the palette of and scale of such abuse, the director points it out. It's very similar to the debate regarding the racism in Quentin Tarantino films. People ask, is he racist because he puts really awful stuff in the mouths of you know, the characters of his films? But what's the intention behind it? Is he really racist, or is it the way how he brutally points the problems of racism to the world? In my opinion, is the latter, but you know, it often is a motive of subjective reading, and you know, no one will really know what's in the director's mind, like, really. Anyway, as I said, this film is an insight into the system of power and the nature of the people within it, and it has very little for the majority of the narrative regarding the matters of faith. It's like the voice within an expressive medium, which serves as a temporal tale, employed as as a lens of an eye-opening commentary. And for example, while it is such a device, it shows multiple instances of the situations where there is a conflict between the system of power and a singular social agent, the citizen. And you know, there are multiple examples in there. There is a journalist who basically is being played by church. There are numerous victims of sexual harassment, and you know, it can be a bit of a post-communist culture, or just an observation of the essence of any system of power, where the collective ruling class means more in terms of you know, the structure of the nation, of the society, of the system of power. It means more to the apparatus of power than the people. And then the film puts very strong emphasis on the multiplicity of the singular, constellated, like detached from each other voices, being ineffective against a coherent system of power driven by the dominant ideology which is already put in the minds of the people. Because, you know, the church in Poland has a big, really far-reaching power, and it is close to the government, and people accept it as the way it is there. So it's just self-explanatory. But it's a very important question to ask now: does this film really distinguish faith and religion? Because for the majority of this film, there are very little textual elements regarding the faith. They just seem missing. There is like just one moment when one of them seems to be praying, and it's the moment when he's in trouble, basically. But ultimately it turns out to be much more complex in terms of faith, good or evil. Yeah, ultimately it does distinguish the faith and religion, because it then turns out that you know, those who turn out to have a real personal, like subjective relationship with God and, you know, with their faith, they turn out to be like good people. It's very hard to describe. Whereas the opportunists who are in the system in this system of power are there just for the power. They keep passing like a dirt machine. So in these terms, for the majority of that narrative, it's not very clear what about the faith. Is there like any element regarding faith in this film? Because it all focuses on the institution, on church as institution, and the priests being basically the clergy, yeah? Clerics. So for the moment there is for the majority of the narrative, I had an impression that maybe those protagonists, three protagonists, represent three different archetypal characters, like archetypal to an extent, like, you know, one is like purely good, another is purely evil, and the third one is like shades of grey, because, you know, one of them seems to have real calling, and, you know, he's got like the best career. In, you know, of three of them, it seems that his calling, his faith, like his goodness, like pushes him, you know, to achieve more. Whereas, you know, some other protagonist who's like, you know, the worst of them because he drinks and, you know, he has sex with women, which, you know, he's a priest in Polish church. You can't do that if you're a priest. You know, he's like, you know, awful. He exploits people for money and things like that, yeah. But then, you know, is this really so, yeah? Do these people behave like this in the moment of like ultimate, like interpersonal moment of the challenge of the test? Yeah, what is that these people will ultimately choose in the most meaningful, in the most serious moment of the decision making in their lives? And that is what defines them as people. And surprisingly, in these terms, the motto is more of the actual narrative device than just the premise of the tone of the film. It turns into a carrier for additional meaning, because not to spoil too much, it turns into something like the first will be the last and the last will be the first, like, in a way. Also, the film can be seen as inspirational for the time, but you know, this could be like just a subjective reading, not exactly encoded in the film, because as we later find out. I don't want to spoil too much. I don't want to tell you too much what happens, but you know that that success, that drive of the person who's like doing like really well in church as a priest, it seems to have like little lining to it.